comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So today is going to be a Boyle Breaks history, but it's going to be a little bit different. So about a week or so ago, I noticed that one of the listeners who has been around since the very beginning and whom I've become very fond of had inexplicably deleted me from everything. Patreon, Instagram, probably Facebook, but just wiped me. And I was like looking him up and I couldn't find him. So I'm like, obviously I've done something wrong here. Obviously I've pissed him off in some way. And so I had to think about it for about 30 seconds. That's how long it took me to know what might be the problem, because it turns out this particular listener is Jewish, from the US, but he's Jewish. And I put two and two together and I came to the conclusion it must have been something I said about the current Israel-Palestine conflict, which is a little bit surprising to me because I hadn't really said anything about the conflict as such. Anyway, I ended up sending him an email asking what it was that I may have said that caused the offense. And his reply is today's Boyle Breaks history: the Jews. Here we go. Now, it's a long one. He starts it with some very complimentary stuff about me and the podcast and all that sort of shit, which is great. I'm not going to read that out for brevity's sake, and because who cares about the nice stuff when there's about 14 paragraphs just trashing the shit out of me. But I think it's very interesting to get the perspective of an actual Jewish person. So here it is, this week's Boyle Breaks history. I'll start here. Boyle, your Boyle Breaks history episode, 4 years, 154 days, was highly offensive to me and for many reasons. So I did that episode about the 1219 Edict of Expulsion, where England kicked out all their Jews. To start with, the entire subject was initiated by some shit-talking done by your Muslim friend. You listen to the shit talk of someone who obviously hates Jews, is in fact completely biased about Jews, and you let him introduce this idea as something that needs to be explored. Really? So if I tell you about how the Palestinians have been kicked out of multiple Arab countries, are you going to do a show about that? Where is your episode covering Black September? I don't know what the fuck Black September is. I'll do an episode next week. Next week, Boyle Breaks history, Black September. Of course you're not. Well, you're wrong there, because I'll do it next week, Black September. I literally have no idea what the fuck it is. I assume it's got something to do with the Jews though. So, of course you're not, because that would kill your little I'm so woke narrative. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now you're crossing the line. Has anything I've ever said on this podcast come across as woke? I can't imagine I've said one woke thing in 1,633 episodes. I'm more concerned about being thrown in jail if this thing ever pops off properly. I'm less worried about being accused of being a woke. That's actually the first time I've ever been accused of being woke. I like it though. Feels good. You know nothing about the conflict, nothing about the Jewish diaspora. Not only do I know nothing about the conflict, I also fucking didn't even know what diaspora meant. Like, I could have guessed, but I had to look it up to double check. It means the spread of people from their homeland, the dispersion of people from their homeland. And yet, you are happy to explain to your listeners about Jews being expelled from countries. And worse, about how we deserved it too. I don't call your episode where you blame the Native Americans for the Trail of Tears, or where you victim blame the Armenians for the genocide by Turkey. What about the Jewish diaspora needed explaining by you? That's a fucking fair point. I needed to fill an episode, to be fair. This is not an event in history that you are detailing. It is the ongoing persecution and murder of my people over thousands of years, and you are laughing about it. I don't think it is funny or cute. Yes, you did speak mostly about the 1219 Edict of Expulsion, but you also mentioned France and Spain and Germany. You unknowingly mentioned the Crusades. It was definitely unknowingly. So it's not one event in history, it is multiple events that you are lumping into one story. Maybe the worst part right off the bat, and more than once, you also blamed the US for the terrible acts that others committed. You literally said, it's on you. It's not on us. You shameless, this is where it gets spicy. You shameless, victim-blaming motherfucker. What exactly did we do in the Middle Ages to deserve the horrific treatment we got? We are scapegoats throughout history because we are different. That's all. We dress differently. We have different rules on how we live and act. And so it's always easy to tell us apart. And you've got those like curly sideburns. That doesn't help. The funny hats and the curly sideburns. It's very easy to spot. Not only that, but Jews back then also believed wholeheartedly that it was sinful to fight or hurt or kill other humans. So we never fought back. We made nice, easy targets. For example, do you know that part of our religion requires us to wash our hands before meals? What do you think? Do you think I knew that? I googled diaspora. This is not a COVID thing. We've been washing our hands before meals for thousands of years. During the Middle Ages, when no one washed themselves on a regular basis, we washed our hands before every meal. People in Europe found it odd and eccentric. It really made a Jewish person stand out. It's also one of the ways that we were identified and then killed during the Inquisition, which, by the way, is why we were expelled from France and Spain. So what? The Inquisition is our fault now? We deserve to be burned alive at the stake because we washed our hands, because we lent money to people who needed to borrow somehow? Knights of the Round Table, question mark, question mark, question mark. I said Knights of the Round Table wanted the Jews out of England in the Edict of Expulsion. No, he says, it was the Knights Templar during the Crusades. Yet another period in history where it was either convert to Christianity or be killed. I guess we brought that on ourselves too, huh? I noticed how you forgot to mention that Muslims were also expelled and murdered by the Templars. Did that part slip your mind? Or is there only one narrative here? Shit-talking Jews. Look, it wasn't all about shit-talking Jews. Maybe 80% of it was. The other 20% was complete ignorance. I didn't even know the Muslims were involved. By the way, almost every country that at some point expelled us first invited us into their societies, specifically because we were well educated, not hostile or warlike, and because we could lend at interest and Christians could not. I think I made that point in the episode. I'm like, the money lending becomes a problem. No matter who's lending, it just becomes a problem. Even if you're borrowing money off family, at some point, there's going to be a fucking issue. It doesn't matter who you are. So being the money lenders is not a good thing. We then spent decades contributing to those societies. Those societies could not have expanded and thrived as they did without our many contributions in science, math, and the arts, and without us lending them money. That's true, the Ashkenazi Jews are meant to be the smartest people, unless that's a conspiracy started by the Ashkenazi Jews. How do you think the kings paid for wars back then? And then, once they got what they needed from us, once we made them better, never once rebelling or revolting, they expelled us without a second thought. And how, just for fun, let's compare that with the state of Islamic communities in the same countries today. France, England, Germany, no assimilation, support of radical Islam within democratic nations, enforcement of Sharia law, zero women's rights. You think those same nations would not expel their Muslim populations today if they could get away with it? It's a known and acknowledged disaster. I do hear whispers of that. It sounds exactly like what the Jews are doing to the Palestinians now. I said that in the episode about the... Let me remember. Fuck, I haven't listened to the episode. I'm pretty sure it was about the English telling the Jews they can leave the country via the south or something. They had a free passage to get out of the country within 24 hours. Otherwise, they were going to get killed. And I think I said something along the lines of the Israelis said the same thing to the Palestinians, but then bombed them on the way. I can't remember. I haven't listened back to the episode. Anyway, it sounds exactly like what the Jews are doing to the Palestinians now. Are you kidding me? You are comparing the murderous duplicity of the same kings that expelled us from their lands whenever they didn't want to pay the lenders back or they needed a political distraction from their own misdeeds to the human shield strategies of Hamas. Also, these bombings in southern Gaza happened during wartime, a war that was started by Hamas. Were the Jews who were murdered on the road of expulsion out of town at war with those kings? Of course not. They didn't even have weapons. No, it's not even a similar comparison. Never mind, exactly like it. I just want to throw in there, Boyle break history isn't well researched. I fucking glance at something for like 30 seconds in a panic before the episode starts, and I try and make it funny. Or whatever. I'm really not going through the details of the history with a fine-tooth comb. And this is where it's hard not to segue into how this episode relates directly to the current war against Hamas, because the timing of this episode is not accidental. You released it in the middle of this war. It is highly derogatory to the Jews. You totally did this in support of the Palestinians, in support of Hamas, and therefore in support of the destruction of the Jewish state of Israel. That is the ultimate goal of Hamas, not the creation of a two-nation state. I'm way, way, way more basic than that. I just don't want murder on any sides. That's all. I'm not in support. I'm not in support of Hamas. That's... I don't even know what fucking Hamas is. But I'm not in support of carpet bombing people either. I wasn't in support of carpet bombing Vietnam when they were doing that. I wasn't in support of the carpet bombing of Dresden in Germany, basically after the war had ended. Wartime or no wartime, I'm anti-carpet bomb. That's my only stance. I'm against murder. Every time you mention another incident of the Jews being expelled, you are giggling like a little girl. Go back and listen to yourself. Look. Was it one of those laughs? Half the time that's a nervous tick. What part of those stories of human suffering is funny to you? Honestly, none. I think this says a lot about how you really feel about the Jews, if I'm being 100% honest. I have always been slightly uncomfortable when you make jokes about Jews, and not because I'm so sensitive a dude. He's not. He's been honest there. He's not a super sensitive dude. I love a well-crafted Jew joke. Well-crafted's not my forte. I just throw it out there. But because you don't really sound like you're joking most times, it sounds like maybe that is how you really feel, and you are using comedy as a cover to say some nasty shit. I've heard plenty of other comedians making jokes about Jews, and it sounds different, man. The way this episode panned out made me understand that you are in fact anti-Semitic. It's not just part of your act, and I don't fuck with people like that. I'm too proud of my heritage to sit back and let someone that I considered a friend to act like that, and I am not wishy-washy about this. I know where I stand, and I'm not some pussy liberal self-hating Jew. I am proud of my history and people and the people that I'm part of. I also have an obligation to the generations that were persecuted and murdered before me to not let the kind of shit you are spewing stand. I owe that to myself and to my relatives who died in the gas chambers. And I'm sure as fuck not going to pay you to shit talk my people and casually spread a hateful message. Not even a measly $16 a month. Hey, It's not a measly $16 a month to me. It all adds up. Is this the right time to be promoting the Patreon? I don't know, but if you want to join the Patreon, head to my website. It's boylecomedy.com. You'll see the Patreon symbol there. Click on it, buy me a pint a month. I also have skin in the game too. Half of my family lives in Israel, and I know people that were tortured and murdered on October 7th. This whole topic that you are joking about is very real to me. It is in fact a question of life or death. So that is why I just had to cut you out. So there's some other stuff down the bottom that he wrote about how I may be an anti-Semite. Now, I'm definitely not an anti-Semite, but independent of this email, something happened that gave me cause to reflect. And this is what happened. So this is before I found out he had fucking wiped me from everything and before we had this email back and forth. So I was watching the TV and it's just fucking news story after news story of Israel carpet bombing fucking Palestine, Palestinians fucking in hospital, kids being killed. It's just constant. And it's depressing as fuck. And then something happened. It went to a different news story. And what it was maybe like 6 or 7 Orthodox Jews, the ones with the fucking hats and the curly sideburns and shit. And they were being harassed by the police. And they were getting the shit kicked out of them. And I was watching it. And I sort of caught myself going, yeah, fuck them. They fucking deserve it. And I caught myself. I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? I'm like, why am I supporting that violence? Why am I finding that violence acceptable? And I fucking really did. I sat there and fucking thought about it. And I'm like, there is a bit in me where I have less empathy for Jewish people than I do most other people. Because watching that, I really did feel less empathy for the person getting their fucking head kicked in. And that was like a little shocking to me. So I thought about it. I'm like, why would I have a bias against the Jews? And I started thinking about the episode that I fucking did. This is before his email as well. I started thinking about it and I started putting myself in the place of a Jewish person getting fucking chased out of their country every fucking 30 years for fucking time immemorial. And I was like, that's fucked. That's a fucking absolute nightmare. That's persecution for millennia. So I was like, all right, the Jews are also a persecuted people in the same sort of way. And then I was like, all right, so where's this lack of empathy fucking stemming from? And it took me like 4 or 5 days to figure out where it came from. And it came from fucking the conspiracy theory world. So when I was like deep into conspiracies like 10, 12 years ago, whenever the fuck it was, every single fucking conspiracy led back somehow to the Jews. So that had fully tainted my perception of Jewish people. And when it gets like tainted that much, you're just like, all Jews are part of some sort of conspiracy, which is like insane. It's not even possible that that's true. So I took stock. I was like, I actually have as many Jewish friends as I do Muslim friends. And I see no difference between them at all. So on a personal level, I don't give a fuck who you are. Honestly, I don't fucking care. But I feel like in a more global sense, I definitely had an ingrained bias or lack of empathy against the Jews. It's hard to argue that. So when I got the email that I just read out, it was kind of like fucking an eye-opener. It sort of made me realize like I had a blind spot there. I thought I was just making Jew jokes, but there was a little bit of nastiness underneath the surface there, which I was unaware of, or I had never thought about it properly. So that's that. We've ended up sorting it all out. I just fucking hope that fucking war over there ends. I hope the war in the Ukraine and fucking Russia ends. Let's not go into fucking World War III, hey? That's all I want. Anyway, that's it for fucking Boyle Breaks History this week. And I'll see you the fuck later.